You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron, and a happy Friday to you all. Coming off the heels of a very competitive Thursday Night Football season opener for the 2025 NFL season as the Eagles took down the Cowboys 24-20. We are diving into just about all the remaining games for this week. I'm actually going to be doing things a little different this year with Monday night matchups. I'm either going to be doing them or having them go up for you all to watch either Sunday night, Monday morning. I have yet to finalize that in totality, but we're talking every single football game from tonight's matchup in Sao Paulo, Brazil, between the Chargers and, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, the runner-ups in this past Super Bowl. And then we'll go through every single Sunday matchup as well. And like I said, that Monday matchup we'll be having either Sunday night and or Monday morning out for you all to digest and consume. But we started out the season 1-0. We took the Eagles, and I actually had the Eagles winning 27-20, final score being 24-20. So about roughly where I thought that game could potentially end up. I figured Eagles are probably about a touchdown or so better than the Cowboys going into that matchup there, and it ended up being a very close, very interesting affair. All the drama, the spitting back and forth between Dak and Jalen Carter to just how chippy that game was. It was awesome to have football back and in the swing of things. But we'll dive in. Comment down below. Let me hear from you all. Pick your games. Go along with me as we go through the season. I finished last season 186-86 on the year. We're looking to see if we can match that or do better this year. And we will begin, of course, with this Friday night's matchup between the Chiefs and the Chargers here. Friday night football for the NFL in Brazil at Corinthians Stadium. The big question for me, I think when I take a look at the Chiefs first here, can they revive their offense in 2025? All eyes will, of course, be on the recently engaged tight end, of course, Travis Kelce, after what was a pretty ugly Super Bowl, I would say myself, in terms of his performance for him. Obviously, there's no Rashee Rice, which everyone was banking on in Kansas City due to the legal troubles that he has found himself in during the offseason. Xavier Worthy, though, is back in his second year, the first-round selection from last year's draft, a healthy Isaiah Pacheco, and a healthy Hollywood Brown on top of that, with a rookie in left tackle Josh Simmons, who, in hindsight now, being that he is healthy and ready to go and start week one, might wind up being a steal in this draft for Kansas City, who has had troubles dealing with just offensive tackle as a whole, both left and right side, for the last handful of seasons now. All eyes will be on this offense and if they can revive themselves this year. I look at the defensive side of things for Kansas City, and this is a team that I expect more dominance from. It's a fairly young core anchored by Chris Jones. When you go through from the defensive line with guys like Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, moving into the linebacking room, Leo Chenal, and of course just all the guys you have over there, such a strong group of linebackers. And then moving even further back into the secondary, headlined by, of course, Trent McDuffie. I don't really have too many worries about them defensively, being led by Steve Spagnuolo. It's going to be another good year, another strong defense for Kansas City. And I mean, maybe you have some concerns surrounding just cornerback depth of the whole if you want to really nitpick some things. But for me, it's just, what does this Chiefs offense look like in 2025? And how do they stand up to a stout and honestly a defense I expect could potentially even match what they did last year, which ended up being first in points per game allowed in the LA Chargers. But for me, when I look at the Chargers, I think one thing I'm really intrigued by is what this remade running back room is going to present here, because obviously you go out, you draft Omarion Hampton, you also brought in Najee Harris during the offseason portion in free agency. Wild 1-2 punch combo, if I do say so myself. I'm actually a big Najee Harris guy. I love his just hard-nosed running style. It's not the most flashy, it's not sexy by any means, but it's effective, and a guy that averages 4 yards per carry is good for me. Pairing him with an Omarion Hampton and what they could potentially do, I think Justin Herbert should be just fine in terms of having things open up for him throwing the football, knowing he has a stout running game behind him there. Left tackle, of course, will be headed by Joe Alt, with Rashawn Slater being out for the season. And what exactly happens at right tackle, not even just in this game, but as the season kind of rolls itself along, will be something worth watching. And then, of course, Trey Harris, also brought in this year's draft, somebody who I think could wind up helping expand what this offense can do through the air. Obviously, Ladd McConkey was the hit last year, and he looked fantastic, and I expect another strong season from him in year number 2, and I think he'll even benefit from having a more competent wide receiver room working alongside of him. Defensively, Joey Bosa is, of course, gone. Tulipulotu, excuse me. I want to make sure I'm saying his name right there. 8.5 sacks in 2024. He's honestly had a couple of strong seasons the last two, and now he gets the opportunity to start opposite of Khalil Mack, as the Chargers, of course, decided to keep Mack, who has been available for them. And in the NFL, when it comes to these types of decisions, when you're choosing between a Khalil Mack and a Joey Bosa, you look at productivity, you look at what they mean to your team. Sometimes it just boils down to, well, who's actually available for us more often? And despite his advanced age comparison to Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack is tried, true, available, and always effective. So having those two paired up should be really fun. There's some young standout corners who really shined last season as fifth-round picks in both Tariq Still and Cam Hart that I think are going to see very largely expanded roles here in this upcoming season. A young stud in the linebacker room in Dayon Henley that you should definitely be keeping an eye on there. This defense, honestly, the way you look at the Chargers, very nice mix of veterans and young talent that is up and coming and rising here. I really like the way the Chargers are built this season. I think they took a good step in the right direction. It really sucks Rashawn Slater is hurt, because I do think that does adjust the ceiling potential for what this Chargers offense could have been this season, but you still have a guy in Joe Alt who, the reason he was drafted as highly as he was is because he was a standout left tackle for Notre Dame. So I think he'll be okay on the left side there. It's just, what does that right side look like on the other side of him? As for who I think is going to win this game here for the first, or I guess second pick of the season here, first of the predictions for today, I'm going to go, not overthink this one here. I'm going to take the Chargers. Or excuse me, I'm going to take the Chiefs. I said the wrong one there. I'm going to take the Chiefs. The reason for that is because I feel a little bit better about what this offense could look like in 2025 for the Chiefs. If you want to argue whether you think the Chargers or the Chiefs defense is better, I think the conversation is certainly there. If you want to base things off of last year's statistics, I mean, that's fine, but it is a new year. A lot of changes have happened. It's not the same unit on either side, despite looking somewhat similar for the most part. There are changes to how both these defenses will operate this season. But I do think that until further notice, it is the Chiefs division. They continue to find ways to win and take down the Chargers. And Justin Herbert's had a tough time going up against Mahomes and this Chiefs team in his career. I'm going to take Kansas City, led by Mahomes, Reed, Steve Spagnuolo on the defensive side of the football. I like what they're doing, and I think that this offense is going to look a little bit different, a little bit more potent than it did last season with all the injuries and just what they struggled to put up on the board. Going into our next game, this will begin the 1 o'clock window of the Sunday matchups. We'll first take a look at Buccaneers and Falcons in Atlanta. This is a fun one here. The Falcons, despite the fact that the Buccaneers walked away with the division title last season, the Falcons were their kryptonite, as the Bucs allowed a whopping 742 passing yards to the Falcons last season combined between both games here. The secondary is where all the attention goes for this one when you look at Tampa Bay and just how they handle themselves against Atlanta's offense. Obviously, you have a second-year quarterback and someone who didn't even play a full rookie season, so it's like pseudo rookie year still for Michael Penix here, going up against an extremely talented group of wide receivers. You go out in the offseason, you draft a couple of cornerbacks, you look at a Benjamin Morrison, you look at a Jacob Parrish coming out of their collegiate schools, Notre Dame and Kansas State respectively, and then on top of that, you added to the pass rush as well in Hassan Reddick. So I'll be very interested in seeing how this defense improves just as a whole, because they struggled against the pass last year in Tampa Bay, and that was one of the biggest issues they had, and Atlanta certainly exposed that, especially in that first matchup that they had that went into overtime. I'm also, offensively for the Buccaneers, expecting a pretty strong season from them. I'm one of those people that's kind of like all in on Tampa Bay this year, and I was kind of in the same boat last year, and obviously hindsight 2020, they weren't quite where they needed to be just yet, but this feels like the year that Tampa Bay could really come on strong. I think the defense does take a nice step forward this season in the offense. When you look at what they did, yes, you don't have Chris Godwin right away, but you went out and got yourself an Emeka Egbuka, who is getting rave reviews coming out of Tampa Bay. I'm a big Baker Mayfield fan. I think the way he was treated by Cleveland and then the journey he had to go through to get back to being a starter in the NFL and receiving the money he deserves, and honestly at this point might even be slightly underpaid, I will say that I think there's a lot to like about what Tampa can do offensively this season. I will be interested in seeing how the blind side is handled, obviously with Tristan Wirfs probably missing the first few weeks of the season, so definitely something worth keeping an eye on. But going up against an Atlanta Falcons defense that was pretty good last season but struggled to pass rush, I feel good about them going into this one. And speaking on that Falcons pass rush, I will say this. I loved what they did this offseason. I felt like it was absolutely necessary to go out and address that pass rush. And when you go out and you sign a Leonard Floyd, who at this stage in his career, whether he's an every down guy or just a pass rushing specialist, he's still somebody who's effective getting after the quarterback. And then going out and getting both Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., because you found yourself in a situation where you did not think you were going to be getting that opportunity to get Jalen Walker where you were. So you double down, you take two guys you really liked in an area of need. I love the aggressive nature of going after and targeting something that needed to be addressed. And if you hit on even just one of those draftees, and if Leonard Floyd can just be a productive pass rusher that you need him to be, the rest of the defense, very stout unit, especially the secondary led by Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, and some others on there. Interior of the defensive line is definitely something to keep an eye on. It might not be the strongest part of this defense, but overall, like, this is a good unit, and they could pose some problems, especially just trying to get open against some of those guys that are in that secondary there. Like, Jesse Bates is one of those I still consider one of the best coverage guys just in the NFL when it comes to playing safety right now. Offensively, it's all about Michael Penix, though, of course, and just how he looks in year two. But, I mean, no shortage of talent to work with. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney was a massive pickup for them last offseason, and he showed it last year. Quietly strong season for Atlanta. If he can just find the magic he had in college and take that next step forward, this could be an extremely potent offense. And I know there's people out there who drafted him and crossing your fingers that maybe this is the emergent season of Kyle Pitts that everyone has just been waiting for, because he has all the insane tools physically that you'd want from just like a prototype receiving tight end. Maybe this is finally the year. We will see. But the Falcons are built to be a successful team this year. It's just a matter of, can they put it all together? For who I have winning in this game, I really like the Buccaneers going into this matchup, so I should say that. I think that this one's kind of a toss-up for me, because I wouldn't be shocked if, like, with the way Atlanta gave Tampa Bay fits last season, if they come out and they still have their number. So do not get me wrong. Like, I think there's very much a road of opportunity for the Falcons to take this one, especially with it being at home. But like I said, I kind of have to put my money where my mouth is on this one when I was trying to decide on this. And because I was in like kind of a toss-up mode, I was like, I'll settle on Tampa Bay here and eat my words if I have to after the fact. I like what the Buccaneers are building. I think they're going to be a strong team this year. But I like Atlanta hanging around. This is one of those games where it's like 27-23. You're going to see a fair amount of points, consistent scoring, consistent movement of both offenses. But I do like the potential upside for points in this game here and just what both of these offenses could bring to the table if everything goes both sides' ways. Going back over to the AFC, we'll take a look now at the Bengals going into Cleveland to take on the Browns. And there are some things you could ask about both of these teams here. But I am one of those people that just does not believe in the Browns this season. And I'm sorry, Cleveland fans. This is just, it's not the season. And there's just been way too much drama for me to be excited about what Cleveland could potentially be putting on the football field this year. The Bengals spent the entire preseason playing their starters. If all goes according to plan, this should be one of the better starts we get out of Cincinnati offensively that they've had, period, since Zach Taylor got rolling over there, since Joe Burrow's been there. This should be the year that the offense just comes out swinging. They looked really good in the preseason, scored a lot of points with their starting units, and they played late into preseason games for preseason standards, that is. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins. I mean, Chase Brown came on strong last year, and it was supposed to be Zach Moss. And then, of course, even tight end Mike Gesicki looked really good in that offense last season. Everyone is feasting if Joe Burrow's dishing the football there. So, yes, offense is going to be insane. Whether the defense can do anything, I feel like if there was ever a good game to kind of get your footing underneath you for the Bengals, the Browns might be the perfect opportunity, because Joe Flacco, the way he plays, it's very high risk, high reward at this point in his season. Like, the guy has nearly as many interceptions as he does touchdowns since his initial run with the Cleveland Browns a couple of seasons ago. And then you look at what the rest of this offense looks like right now. The fact that you don't have Quinshon Judkins in there, and he was supposed to be a big piece of your offense there, that has me concerned. I do like Jerome Ford, and I'll be interested to see what like Dylan Sampson is able to do. And obviously Jerry Jeudy had a big season last year, but I don't know about this team. You have Myles Garrett on defense, some other guys I like a Denzel Ward there, Greg Newsome there on top of that, but like, I just don't know about Cleveland. I'm taking Cincinnati. I think they have themselves a solid performance here. I could see the Bengals just giving the Browns a hard time in terms of keeping up. I like Cincinnati putting up like 30 points in this game, most likely, give or take maybe a few, but I like something along the lines of like 30 to 20 Cincinnati. I think we're going to see a really well-oiled machine from Cincinnati, and just I at this stage, with what we've gotten from Joe Flacco the last 2 years, not super high on it. I don't think there's enough on the offense altogether. A good, healthy offensive line could be a plus and maybe work in the favor of Cleveland, especially if they really try to run the football and limit possessions against Cincinnati. But something tells me the Bengals could come out scoring, and come out scoring quick at this point. So 30-20, give me the Bengals. This next game we'll look at, this is one of those that, despite the fact that I grew up rooting for the Colts, I will say I kind of wish I didn't have to pick this game, because I'm not really looking forward to it here. The Colts settling on Daniel Jones is just... I feel like that sums up this franchise over the last, basically, 6 years now since Andrew Luck retired. Like, the fact that we are in Indianapolis, or not we are, excuse me, Indianapolis is where they are, with the current situation of Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback, I think summarizes where that team is. It's just not good, to put it simply. I was kind of out on Anthony Richardson going into last season, and last season all but confirmed that for me. And it's unfortunate, because I like the skill talent in Indianapolis. I think you have one of the more exciting young wide receiver rooms overall, like Michael Pittman leading the way, but then you have a Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce, a lot of really fun wide receivers there. You go out, you get yourself a Tyler Warren, obviously, to work with as well, and Jonathan Taylor's coming out of the backfield, but this could potentially be the most talented offense that Daniel Jones has in his career, just like in totality. Like, yeah, obviously he played in wide receiver rooms that had Saquon Barkley in the backfield, but this could potentially be the most talented offense he has, and that still does not really excite me. The turnovers are a gross issue, and how the Colts are able to handle Miami's offense is definitely one of those things that I'm very curious about. They went out of their way to really make a lot of changes, bringing in like a Charvarius Ward and a Cameron Bynum. They moved on from second, second round selection. I can't remember what it was, but Juju Brent's obviously a high pick that was supposed to be a big piece of this defense that just could never stay healthy and on the football field. You obviously have a pretty stout defensive line still led by DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Obviously Leatu Latu from last year's draft. You have a Kwity Paye, and then this year's draft you go out and you get yourself JT Tuimoloau. So like, there's a lot to like, but I just don't know. And maybe it's because I'm a pessimist when it comes to the Colts. Guilty as charged if that really is the case. Miami has their kind of own dark cloud hanging over them. I actually have a coworker of mine where I work that loves to talk about the Dolphins whenever I come across with him, and like, conversation just a couple of days ago. So what do you think about Miami this season? Because it's the first time I talked to him in a little bit. And not great reviews. And that was a bit surprising coming from a Dolphins fan. Like, I know that that's kind of the general consensus right now, but it was interesting hearing it from somebody within that fandom. And the way I see it, Miami's still talented. They still have a really good group of guys to work with. Like, Tua, as long as he's healthy, great quarterback, especially when he gets into rhythm. Tyreek Hill's obviously still there. Whether he has earned the love and respect of his team back, I feel like we will find out pretty early on. Because if he's not getting the football, and things are like awkward, if it just feels awkward, you see stuff on the sideline where he's not near people and he's not, yucking it up with the boys as the game is going on, then there's obviously more trouble brewing in Miami than maybe I even realize. But then, of course, Jalen Waddle, a Devon Achane, and low-key, I really love that Ollie Gordon found his way into Miami, because if Mike McDaniel can retool this offense and get it back to where it needs to be, Ollie Gordon could be one of those guys who would massively benefit with his skill and talent that he showed a couple seasons ago collegiately. He could be somebody who lights it up in Miami as like a nice compliment to Devon Achane. Their offense is all about getting in a rhythm, and that's kind of the big key for them there. And the Colts defense, the way they've operated, has been very much, it feels like just drop back in zone cover 2, 4-man rush. Like they don't do anything too fancy. Like they're not one to blitz a lot. Like it's just drop back into coverage, react to what's happening. And if you're letting Miami do that, smells like trouble for me. Miami's defense is definitely one to watch. Their starting 11 is honestly a pretty solid unit. Cornerbacks aside, I feel like there's definitely some concern there. But like, you look at the defensive front, led by Bradley Chubb and Zach Sealer, and if Jalen Phillips can just stay healthy, I mean, in the spurts he's on the football field, he looks great. And I don't know if it's just been too many injuries to this point for him to get back to what he could have potentially been before all the injuries started wrecking his career, but you have a pretty strong group there if everyone stays healthy. I like the linebacking room led by Tyrell Dodson and Jordan Brooks. I think you have some really good linebackers there. And Minkah Fitzpatrick obviously coming into the fold, I think helps solidify your secondary a little bit and gives you a decent safety room. But obviously it's going to come down to that cornerback room and just how well they're able to cover those wide receivers in Indy. Overall, though, this is a tough one to pick. This is kind of a toss-up game for me in my eyes, but I think I'm going to settle on the Miami Dolphins on this one here. I wanted to go Colts, and I was actually on Colts up until right about I decided to hit record, but I was just kind of looking over my notes one last time, and I was like, I feel like I'm picking the Colts because I feel like I should, but they also can't buy a win to save their life the first week of the season. I believe the stat is that they have not won a football game week 1 since 2014, which is the third year of Andrew Luck's career. That's how long ago that was, with the exception of a singular tie with the Texans back in 22, I believe. So I don't know. Maybe I'm down on the Colts. It is what it is. I grew up rooting for them. The fandom is not what it used to be, and I do not have high hopes for them this season with Danny Dimes under center. So I'll take the Dolphins, and I think something along the lines of this one, it's weird because it could go, what is the score for this football game? One of those weird ones to settle on. I think something in the ballpark of 24-21. You see some points, but I think both sides don't really run away from the game from either of each other. I think it could stay close, but I'd like the Dolphins by a hair. Looking at the Patriots and Raiders now, sticking in the AFC. This is a fun one here in New England. Patriots, no Christian Gonzalez. Feels like the direction the Patriots are heading in, even for the next few weeks, minus him. And if that's the case, not too excited for this secondary. Yes, you go out and you add a Carlton Davis. He's supposed to be a complement, though, to what you are able to do having a guy like Christian Gonzalez out on the football field. So I am a little bit concerned about that, especially with just the amount of talent you have in Las Vegas that you're going up against. Offensively, I genuinely have no idea what to expect from this team. I mean, it's one of those things that it's kind of by design. I feel like Josh McDaniels is not even close to showing what his hand is actually going to be in the regular season here, and I feel like a lot of what they want to do offensively was kept under wraps by design. We've seen some glimpses here and there of what it could potentially look like through training camp, joint practices, and things that the media has been able to attend, but it's one of those things where, I don't know. I'm optimistic about Drake May, but I don't think I am as high on him as some others. I'm certainly in the camp of we have not seen enough from Drake May, and that's one of those things where between that and, of course, the wide receiver room being meh, Stephon Diggs, exciting. If he's healthy and get back to form the way he looked in Houston last year, great. I would feel a lot better about the wide receiver room. I like Pop Douglas. I think he could end up having a pretty good season for the team. But then after that, it's a bit of a drop-off in the wide receiver room. Yes, Kayshon Boutte found a bit of a rhythm with Drake May last season. Kyle Williams is obviously an exciting guy that they brought in the draft this year. And then, Travion Henderson's probably the one I'm the most excited about in the entire offense, because obviously the electric kickoff return to get things rolling for his career in the NFL was a fun way to start, but just his boom potential that he has for a Patriots offense that I feel has not had boom since the heydays of, unfortunately, when Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski were running together as tight ends. It's been a while since we've really seen an explosive offense in New England. So Travion Henderson and what he could bring out of the backfield, really exciting stuff. On the flip side, when I look at the Raiders going in here, obviously, prime opportunity to get your offense off on a good start here. Like I said, you have a lot of really good guys to work with. I like Jacoby Myers. He might not be a premier number one wide receiver, but he's a 1,000-yard receiver nonetheless after last season. Brock Bowers might be the best receiving tight end in the NFL, quite possibly the best tight end in the NFL after just one season with how good he looked last season. And then Ashton Genty. That is the perfect guy for Pete Carroll, who loves to run the football and set up his passing game through the running game. And Geno Smith is someone who I think caught way too much flack during his time in Seattle when things weren't going well, when in reality there's been a lot of issues in Seattle, and their inability to protect the quarterback extends beyond even Geno Smith's time while he was there. So one of those things where Geno Smith, as it currently stands right now, really good talent across the board, a very balanced group of talent to work with. He had some really good receivers during his time in Seattle, but this season he's coming in with one of the most intriguing running back prospects to come out of the draft in recent years. Brock Bowers, like I said, basically established himself last season as one of the top tight ends, and Jacoby Myers should be a reliable, sure-handed threat for him to throw the football to. And if anyone else can open up in the wide receiver room and get themselves some balls their way, this could be a formidable offense. And I think the O-line in Las Vegas is better than anything that Geno Smith saw while he was in Seattle. So, I feel like there is good ceiling potential here for what the Raiders could do offensively. The defensive side's obviously a little bit more of a question mark with how people seem to feel about them. Obviously, the weird stuff going on with what happened with Christian Wilkins sucks for the defense as a whole, because you'd really like to have a Christian Wilkins type of talent in the middle of that defense there. But you still have Max Crosby. Malcolm Kuntz is coming off a season-ending injury from last year. He looked really good the year prior in 2023. So if those two can catch fire together, if Malcolm Kuntz can get back to what he was prior to his injury, you have the opportunity to give a team like the New England Patriots, who are starting a rookie left tackle and a aging right tackle, some serious fits when dropping back to protect their quarterback. So there is a lot to be intrigued about with this matchup. I think that both these teams match up really well, and it's going to be one of those closer affairs. And I like the Raiders for this one. In a tighter contest, think something along the lines of 23-20 Raiders. I don't think anyone runs away from each other in this one either. This is another kind of toss-up, could go both ways, but I do think the Raiders have a little bit more in the tank, but I think it stays close. It's going to be a grindy season for the Patriots, and maybe the Raiders offense doesn't quite show up to the level that I think that they could potentially be capable of this season right away. And the Patriots do have some good defensive talent out there, even despite the fact that they're missing Christian Gonzalez. Obviously, you go and you bring in a Harold Landry. You bring yourself in, of course, the Milton Williams big ticket signing. Christian Barmore, is back from the season-long blood clot issue he was having last season. So, there's a lot to like about the Patriots defense still, in spite of the fact of missing their key cog to that defense. But I do like the Raiders. Again, by a hair, 23-20, good contest. Cardinals and Saints, I don't really have a whole lot on this game, to be quite honest with you. To Saints fans, this is by no means hate, slander, or anything like that. Or just I quite frankly feel like the Saints are one of those teams that are probably picking in the top 3 of next season's draft. I feel like there is a quarterback coming out of one of the top quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft class is probably in New Orleans next year. That's kind of how I'm looking at this season. There's got to be a team or two that goes like that, and the Saints are kind of one of the teams that I've kind of put into that crosshair for me this year. They could prove me wrong, but I'm just not a big Spencer Rattler believer, and New Orleans just feels like it's in that position. I think the Derek Carr retirement, and then seeing Tyrann Mathieu just out of nowhere kind of retire as well, whether he had been thinking about retiring or not, it's not something I'm privy to, so please let me know. But it's one of those things where you see those two guys go, and Derek Carr's situation was obviously kind of a weird one. Tyrann kind of felt more again, and I don't know the situation, but it kind of felt this is not looking great. I'm getting old. I played for the team that I played for in college. I also played for in that state with the Saints itself. Let me just get on out of here kind of thing and be done with my career. And so that's where we stand now with the Saints. Arizona, meanwhile, I like a lot of what they did this year to kind of build out their team, especially on the defensive side. The defensive front overall, and I said this a lot about the Cardinals last year, one of the most talent deficient units in the NFL when you went across, especially the D-line. You go out, you get a Josh Sweat, a Dalvin Tomlinson, and bringing back Calais Campbell for a reunion after years away from the team. You get a good linebacker in Akeem Davis-Gaither. The defense itself got a massive facelift, and now the way things are geared for them offensively, it's a very big prove-it season for Kyler Murray in my eyes. I think he's going to come out motivated. Marvin Harrison Jr. going into his second season, he's got to take that next leap. There was so much generational talent surrounding him coming out of college. This needs to be a monster season where the Cardinals offense needs to open it up and let him fly. And I think you have a good opportunity this first week with the way the Saints are currently constructed. You could maybe get some of that, or at least a nice little glimpse of it, of what it could potentially be like this year if they really let him fly. So I like the Cardinals in this one here. I'm sorry, Saints fans. It's just not one of those that I'm super high. It's not a team I'm super high on right now. I like the Cardinals 27-17, something along those lines. I think the Cardinals are a pretty good favorite in my humble opinion here. Looking at our next game, though, we have a bit of a grudge match kind of going on here between former quarterbacks taking on their former teams. Steelers going to New York to take on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, revenge game against the Jets. Then you look on Justin Fields' side, revenge game against the Steelers for benching him after taking the team to a 4-2 start last season. But we're not getting into that conversation. We are just looking at both of these teams having gone through some fairly significant changes throughout the entirety of the offseason. Obviously, the Jets a little bit more, being that they have themselves an entire new head coach and obviously just a regime as a whole, from the front office to those people coaching the players on the football field. I will say, though, that I do like what the Jets did this offseason to kind of retool themselves, especially defensively. It's clear they wanted to get back to strong defensive football, and you bring in a guy like Aaron Glenn, quite obvious that's the direction you're going to go. Brandon Stevens, Andre Sisco, a couple of really good guys to add in that secondary there to a group that's just a defensive group as a whole that's already pretty stout. Sauce Gardner's obviously in that secondary. Quinnen Williams up front. Jamie Sherwood and Quincy Williams, two standout linebackers that you have on that defense as well. I like what they bring to the table defensively. It's the offense that I'm a little bit worried about, and the Elijah Vera Tucker news is what really kind of was like, oh man, like this might not be great, and like I'm a little bit concerned. The quarterback situation and what Justin Fields is going to bring, whether it was just them trying to hide their offense this entire like training camp and preseason, because a lot of people were putting them under the microscope for not throwing the football forward a lot through what everyone was seeing while Justin Fields was out on the football field. Preseason is what it is. A lot of teams won't show their hands even in the slightest, and it feels like the Jets maybe kept their offensive game plan a little bit closer to the vest than some other teams. But like losing Elijah Vera Tucker on an offensive line that has not been perfect definitely has me worried. You have Olu Fashanu coming in, obviously not a ton of starting experience, despite the fact that it's going to be his second season because of injury, and then like an Armand Membu, he's coming in, rookie as well. So two bookend offensive tackles, not a ton of experience between the two, and going up against the Steelers defensive front that could be one of the best in the NFL this season has me a little bit worried. And then the Steelers on the flip side, like I said, that defensive front, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, the ageless Cameron Hayward, who I know is looking for a contract, but he's a pro's pro, and I feel like he's going to be out there on the football field. Like the conversation that has been tried to be spurred up about him is, He again, pro's pro, not the type of guy that I could see holding out of actual games, but definitely in his own way making statements to the team of like, you guys need to pay me. And like, I called him the ageless Cam Hayward for a reason, because despite the age, he continues to produce at an unbelievable level, and I think he needs to be paid as such. That being said, when you flip the script, you look at the offense, Aaron Rodgers. If he can just provide solid quarterbacking, solid. It doesn't even have to be great. It doesn't even have to be good. Solid. Protect the football. Don't make mistakes. Manage things at the line of scrimmage. Take your team through the motions of a football game without setting them back. Pittsburgh should be a playoff team. Absolutely. And when you look at what Aaron Glenn is doing over there in New York, yes, I like the talent. I am curious, though, what this could potentially look like, because it wasn't perfect for Aaron Glenn in Detroit. Those defenses, and whether you want to discuss like talent availability and who was on the defenses of the Detroit Lions the last few seasons while Aaron Glenn was there and yada, 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 the defenses were not always spectacular. Yes, there was a ton of injuries last season, and Aaron Glenn basically earned himself a head coaching job for being able to keep that defense on the football field, and especially as the season wore on, competitive in some instances as well. Yeah, like great, good, but in totality, defense has not been great in Detroit, and that is something I am somewhat worried about. And Pittsburgh has options to spread the football around. They just paid Jalen Warren, who I think is going to have a significant role in this offense. Of course, DK Metcalf is now in the fold as well, being brought in as kind of like a something to entice Aaron Rodgers, I guess, to come out of, or not come out of retirement, but push retirement to the side for a season to join them for a year at potentially making a run for a championship. A Pat Frymuth at tight end, a Calvin Austin, who's emerged as a good receiving threat for them as well. I'm very, very curious to see what both of these quarterbacks can do in these new systems for their new teams against their former teams. It's one of those interesting storylines, and I got to shout out the NFL for this one, because it's not too often that something like this gets to actually happen the way it is. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. One of those 1:00 games that it's like, you look at it and you go, meh, but like if you look into the storylines, like, oh, okay, pretty interesting game overall. I do like the Steelers in this one, though. I don't expect a ton of points. This one feels like a grinder, like an absolute grinder. And I'm talking like a typical Steelers-esque type of game for you Steelers fans out there. I'm thinking like 20-13, 23-13, 23-17. There's not going to be a lot of points. Think low-scoring, gritty, grindy type of football as these offenses try to figure themselves out with new quarterbacks. And two, what I think are going to be good defenses. Steelers, I would give a little bit more praise to, but overall, gritty defenses, offenses that are maybe going to have to grind their way out to figure out what they are this season with their new quarterbacks at the helm. But I like the Steelers in the ballpark of like 20-13, 20-17, maybe 23-17, something along those lines. Next one here, we have the Giants and the Commanders, so an NFC East clash. Did Washington do enough to get them over the hump this season? And I love the way that they swung big offensively. You trade for a Deebo Samuel, you trade for a Laramie Tunsil, you make sure that you pay Terry McLaurin after a little bit of an awkward standoff, but he is sticking around, and to no surprise, I feel like letting Terry McLaurin go after having one of his career best seasons with Jaden Daniels under center, like you can't just let him go after that. And then we got to shout out Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who seems to have potentially gotten Brian Robinson traded, and it seems like could be leading the way out of the running back room with Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols. Like one of the craziest things, a 7th round pick just out of nowhere. But this is one of those guys that like I kept reading about, but there's so much going on in the preseason. It's so hard to follow everything because so many people are just coming in and out of games. When I finally sat down to like check out his highlight tape, just because I was curious why there's so much noise about him, I get it. Like I absolutely get it. The way he runs, it's not like, oh, he's having success because he's going up against backups. He is making a move and making something happen every single play, and he's tough to bring down too. So this is someone to keep an eye on. Like if you're one of those like in the know fantasy football people, this guy's probably sitting on a lot of like the big fantasy nerds benches because he could have himself a hell of a season if what we're seeing from him in the preseason translates into the regular season. Because it's not just like he's racking up numbers against backups. It's the way he moves and the way he makes people miss that feels very different. It's not the same kind of thing. Defensively, you go out, you make some big purchases as well. Javon Kinlaw, Von Miller, Jonathan Jones. A lot of money being thrown around to some veterans. Defense, older, I guess you could say, when you look at just like the entire scope of the group. But I like it. You have a really good veteran presence, a young, fairly savvy offense altogether. Headlined by, of course, Jaden Daniels, could pose a bit of a problem for this Giants team. But for what it's worth, the Giants defense, good unit, in spite of what last season was. And it feels like a lot of people aren't even aware of this unless they're a Giants fan or just follow the Giants enough to know. Defense was a pretty stout unit. And in large part, the only reason they finished the way they did last season is because the offense was horrendous, like capital HORR, horrendous. That being said, you go in, you draft a guy like Abdul Carter, unbelievable talent coming out of Penn State, to join an already pretty strong unit of edge rushers in Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. If Kayvon Thibodeau can just stay healthy, you bring in Abdul Carter to spell him or vice versa, however that works itself out, because it's a 3-man group now that you're working with. Always want to have more pass rushers than none kind of deal. That could be a problem for opposing quarterbacks and offensive lines to deal with. You add in some good additions into the secondary like Javon Holland and a Paulson Adebo, who that's one of those, like, I'll be curious to see how that plays because it felt like he was really coming on in New Orleans. And then the fact that they were just so willing to let him walk was kind of interesting in my eyes. So we'll see how that fits itself in here. But I expect this defense to still be a good unit here. And I think they will be up to the challenge at the very least to try and slow down what this Commanders offense could be doing. Then, of course, Russell Wilson coming in. If he can just deliver competent quarterback play, again, that defense was a good unit and was put in a lot of bad situations because of the offense. If you're just protecting the football, not putting your defense in bad positions, this is a team that absolutely could take a big leap forward, like one of those from, bottom of the barrel 3-win teams to we're pushing near 10 victories because we have competent quarterback play now, and the rest of the roster is built out fairly well. Like, I like, obviously, Malik Neighbors, unbelievable talent, numbers that he put up in just 15 games last season and only 13 starts, mind you. Good stuff all around there. And then, of course, Tyrone Tracy emerging despite the fact that you basically had no passing game, and people caught on pretty quickly to, like, what he was doing, but he was still being effective. And then the fact that you kept Darius Slayton around, I think, is a nice compliment to Malik Neighbors. So, like, you have a pretty good offense for the most part, put together to work with. It's not going to be anything outstanding. Like, this is like a league average offense in my eyes that's going to be built off the back of just how good their defense is going to be and how often their defense might put them in a really good spots to succeed. So really dynamic matchup between both sides, because I feel like you look at the Commanders and you go, like, high octane, lot of flashiness with the Commanders, whereas Giants look more grindy, more of a hard-nosed style of football maybe that you're kind of getting yourself into. Built on, like, basis of your team's success comes off the defense and your offense just doing a good job not putting them in bad positions. I do, however, though, think I like the Commanders in this one here. I'm really big on the fact that they went out and got Laramie Tunsil for the blind side. And if you're improving the trenches the way that the Commanders try to this offseason, coupled with the addition of Deebo Samuel, like, there is a lot to be excited about there for Washington. And I'm one of those people that never bought into the whole, just wait until we're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks in until we got to basically the NFC Championship game. And people were like, they're going to finally have tape on Daniels. And they never did. Or at least they did, but they could never figure it out. Something tells me what they have in Washington is special. I think Jaden Daniels could be one of those quarterbacks that's going to be terrorizing defenses for years to come. I think he might do a little bit of the same here, maybe a little too much aggressiveness from that Giants defense that ultimately allows Jaden Daniels to slip past them here and there, make some big plays. I like the Commanders. I like them in the ballpark of something along the lines of like 28-23. I think they could get up some good points. For the Giants, though, like I said, I don't think they're going to put themselves in bad spots, but I don't know if they have quite enough talent. They don't have enough gas in the tank, just at least the way I'm guessing at this point, to maybe keep pace with what the Commanders are able to do offensively. So give me the Commanders there. This next one, Panthers and Jaguars. Interesting storyline for both of these teams here, because like you look on the Jaguars side, new head coach in Liam Cohen trying to basically save Trevor Lawrence's career the way he did Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. Of course, a lot to be excited about. Travis Hunter going to be paired alongside with Brian Thomas Jr., who basically walked away from his first season in the NFL as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Like, it was crazy. Honestly, could be arguably one of the best big threats, like deep football threats in the NFL already, which is crazy considering he just came out of his first year. But what he was able to do in getting behind defenses was incredible last year for a rookie. Then Travis Hunter comes into the mix, really strong wide receiver candidate. Sounds like he's going to play a fair amount on defense as well. I'm very curious to see what the snap percentages on both sides of the football look like for him. This running back room, interesting group. Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. You go into the draft and you get one of the crazier athletic freaks for the running back position in Bashal Tutin. There is definitely some intrigue with this offense here, but a lot of it's going to come down to Liam Cohen and what he is able to do here. Defensively, we can kind of look back at Travis Hunter again, because he comes in and I'm curious to see, it sounds like from what I've gathered, starting at wide receiver and then second string corner, depending on who you talk to. That's just kind of what it seems like. So he's going to get in a decent amount of time because you're going to roll through your corners, and especially if you're going into dime packages where you've got 4 or 5 corners on the football field, depending on the situation and what's being called for. There's obviously the reality of that being a possibility where he sees time that way. There's a lot of nuance to that conversation, but I'm curious to see just how much he makes the football field on both sides, but especially defensively, if it sounds like he's going to be wide receiver focused this year to at least kick things off, whereas secondary might be, second focus kind of thing. I do think that the roster up front is a pretty heavy unit and one of those groups that is strong up front. The thing, when you start to look to the back, things get a little bit meh. Obviously Tyson Campbell's in the fold there, Travis Hunter being an addition to that, but up front, I'm a big fan of Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker as a pairing. I feel like we need to see more production from them two as a duo. And then, of course, you have guys like Foye Oluokun and Devin Lloyd in the linebacking room. So strong up front, little less so in the back of that defense, and I think that showed in the statistics last year as well. We'll see how much they improved, but definitely something to keep an eye on. On the flip side, when you look at the Panthers, Bryce Young, looking to build momentum. I will come out and say this immediately just because I don't want Panthers fans to think I'm some secret hater or something like that. I'm not high on Bryce Young, and I really don't know what his career trajectory is going to be from this point forward. But I'm willing to acknowledge the fact that after being benched last year, which I thought that was it for him, he did show improvement when he came back on the football field. Now, if you want to get into the conversation of the opponents that he was playing and what have you, like that's a whole other conversation if we were just focusing on that. But I'm willing to admit that there was improvement on the football field when he came back from that benching. Jacksonville, if you had to pick a defense to kind of get your confidence going early based off what you saw last year, you should feel pretty good. Obviously, changes have been made, so that might not necessarily ring true this year. But from what you know to this point, you probably feel like, okay, this is a good game to kind of get the ball rolling there. Chuba Hubbard obviously doing his thing on the ground could maybe really open some things up in the passing game too if you get the ball rolling on the ground. But I'm really looking at the defense here because the run defense was probably the worst. I'm sorry, Panthers fans, because it sounds really harsh, but I'm just being honest. Probably the worst run defense I've ever personally witnessed when you look at just how poorly they were able to defend the run overall. It was insanity. They felt like you couldn't stop a nosebleed with a box of Kleenex. Like, it was insane. So between that and them going out this offseason, adding a Treshaun Wharton, adding a Bobby Brown, adding a Patrick Jones, and a thumping type of safety in Trayvon Moehrig, I really, really hope that gets put together a little bit better this season and they're able to button that up a bit. Because if they can, then we can start feeling good about maybe this team taking a good step forward. But that is just what, like, they were so far behind the 31st ranked run defense last year in terms of like yards per game allowed. There's so much ground to make up. You have to hope that you hit on at least like 2 out of the 4 of these signings to really feel good about where this run defense could be this year. And you're going up against a team that wasn't necessarily the best running offense last season, so a good confidence booster if things go your way. But one of those games that, again, toss-up type of football game here. Like, if you pick Panthers, you pick Jaguars, whatever you take, I'm not arguing with you. I could see where you're coming from kind of deal. I'm going to go Jaguars, though. I like what Liam Cohen did with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, and I'm one of those people that like am baffled by the career trajectory of Trevor Lawrence, and it has not really been great for him in the surrounding cast he's had from the coaching side of things. He's had some talented players to work with here and there, but like it starts with the coaching, and that has not really been well put together to this point in his career. So like he is to a fault a piece of that, but also you have to look at what's been going on around him. And the Jaguars selected him when they did for a reason, and it feels like to this point they have not really figured out the reason why they were in the spot they were to be picking Trevor Lawrence. So I'm hoping that this is the year, and I think Liam Cohen could potentially turn this offense around, and I don't quite know if the Panthers have it in the tank to keep up with them for this game here. So I like the Jaguars. I will take them 24-17, good ball game, tighter ball game, but I do think the Jaguars got them. Moving into the afternoon window now, this is where games just get really, really good. And this is the one game here of the afternoon window that is like not name brand value, because you got the Denver Broncos and the Tennessee Titans, like Broncos number 7 seed for the AFC last year, and then of course Titans first overall selection. However, Cam Ward, at least for me personally, the least talked about first overall selection I think I have ever seen, ever. He's going up against quite a defense in his rookie debut, and I wish him the best because Denver ranked first in total pressures last year with 195 and sacks at 63. They were the best pass rush in the NFL last season. Tennessee, deliberate in trying to rebuild that offensive line for preparation in bringing in a Cam Ward. You go out, you get yourself Kevin Zeitler, Dan Moore as well for the left tackle spot, bolstering the offensive line. And then on top of that, you get yourself a Tyler Lockett, 2 veteran wide receivers. Calvin Ridley clearly still has some in the tank, and it's one of those guys that like his route running is just beautiful and unmatched compared to most, at least during his peak, and I think to this point still is a very excellent route runner. So between him and what Tyler Lockett presents here, I think you have a good wide receiver room to work with. I'll be curious to see how the ground game looks this season, but all eyes are on Cam Ward, quite frankly, against a really good defense. On the defensive side for Tennessee, you look at L'Jarius Sneed returning from injury. That basically made him miss all but 5 games last season. Tennessee's defense was actually pretty formidable last season. Now, they did struggle with stopping the run. That was kind of their Achilles heel. But when it came to slowing down the pass, they did a good job of doing that. So with L'Jarius Sneed in tow, secondary should be better this year. If they can get better on that front, stopping the ball on the ground, they go and they get a guy like a Cody Barton for linebacker. Edge rusher Jamont Jones can help bolster things up. And then you obviously look at a second-year man in Tavondre Sweat. You're hoping you get more out of him. I think the defense could be pretty good. And one of the big issues for Tennessee last year was it felt like their defense was on the field all the time because Tennessee was just turning the ball over left and right with the quarterback play that they were getting. So I do think this defense could pose some problems for a young Bo Nix. But that being said, when you look at this Denver defense, this is probably my favorite defense in the NFL coming into the season. And this is not the first time this has happened, oddly enough. Denver has done this a few times throughout my life as a NFL fan, where they have put together some of my favorite defenses I've gotten to watch. Last year, as we had mentioned earlier, first in pressures, first in sacks. You go out, you get yourself a Talanoa Hufanga, which is maybe it's just a cost thing, but that he like at one point emerging as like one of the best safeties in the NFL. The fact that the 49ers allowed him to walk, kind of an interesting thing to me. But then also like getting in a Dre Greenlaw as well. 2 guys who have at least made it to the big game to help add some of that DNA into your roster, headlined by a cornerback in Patrick Surtain, and then Nick Bonito, who may or may not, depending on who you talk to, be a household name, but after this season, I think is going to be a household name, just getting paid as well. Congratulations on the dollars. But this is a championship caliber defense, and like I said, a little bit worried about what they could potentially do to this Tennessee Titans offense and a young Cam Ward as he makes his first start in the NFL. And then on the offensive side, Bo Nix. You got a couple of new running backs behind him in J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. And for Bo Nix, it's all about just how he handles the pressure this year. That was probably the one flaw to his game last season, is that the numbers between when he was and wasn't under pressure is just like such a wide gap. His completion percentage last year, not under pressure, goes from 72.1% and tanks nearly 30% down to 45 whenever he was under pressure. And like the touchdown to interception ratio is 3-1 not under pressure and just 1-1 under pressure. So like if he could just put together, and for what it's worth, in the division that he's in that has pretty good quarterback play, all things considered, with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and now with Justin Smith in that division as well, among those 4 quarterbacks, he put up the worst numbers under pressure, and maybe a couple of them are like not by a lot, but still the worst of the 4. If he can just get better there, if he can feel better about where he's going with the football as the play breaks down, I had a really hard time finding things to pick out about Bo Nix's game that isn't good from year one. And maybe it's just how he handles the pressure is that one critique I can give him. If he can get better with that and just more sure in his decision-making when things start to break down, Denver really has something special brewing here. Like at this point, I didn't have any real high hopes for Bo Nix last season. Like I'm not a Broncos fan, and I basically had my fingers crossed because I loved the hate that he was getting for being an older quarterback coming out of college with how much time he spent there. Oh, he's older than most second and third year players coming into the league. For all intents and purposes, it worked out last season. That's all I'm saying. And a lot of these quarterbacks that come out now these days with just 1, maybe 2 years of experience under their belt keep falling on their face. But sure enough, the near 25-year-old quarterback, or if he was 25 when he started last season, comes in as a rookie and looks lights out with all that starting experience under his belt. That might be something that teams make note of as his career continues to progress. So keep an eye on what Denver and Bo Nix are doing over there. I like the Broncos for this game here. I think we see this is a tough one for Tennessee. I think it's, we're looking at like 13, maybe 16 points out of Tennessee. And I think Denver's cruising like 24, 27 points in that ballpark. So like, give me like 24-13, bigger number goes first, 24-13, 27-17, something like that. You're going to get a good margin where Denver feels like this is a handed victory for them. Going over to the NFC West, we look at the 49ers and the Seahawks here. Seattle fans, I do not like Sam Darnold in Seattle. It worked for a stretch last season in Minnesota, but I do not like him in Seattle. And we kind of touched on this like a hair when I was talking about Geno Smith during his time in Seattle when we were discussing Raiders and Patriots. I don't like him in Seattle. Just to put it simply, I am concerned about how things could shake out for him if Seattle's O-line just can't protect him. It has been tough where there have been multiple seasons where Seattle has been within the top 10 of the NFL in sacks allowed on their quarterback going all the way back to like 2020. I think 2023 is the only season they weren't inside the top 10 of sacks allowed. So this dates back to like when Russell Wilson was still there throwing them the football. So like protecting him is key. And if things break down, this is not going to go well, and it's not your fault. So let me just say that. This is no hate to Seattle. I like everything else going on in Seattle right now except for quarterback. And it's like so glaring. I am not a Sam Darnold guy. I'm sorry. Defensively, I'm expecting this unit to be flirting somewhere around top 10. I like what we've been getting from them so far. And listen, Mike McDonald, defensive-minded guy. He's in the position he's in for a reason. He earned that spot with the defenses he built in Baltimore. This should be a unit that is formidable, at minimum. Top 10 is expected almost based off just the talent you have, who's leading the way, the scheme that they're running. Everything is pointing to a top 10 unit. You look at Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence, Ernest Jones, Devin Witherspoon, Tyreek Woolen, Julian Love. Like, you have really strong names on that defense who are amongst the best at their positions. That being said, in the draft, you get yourself a Nick Emmanwori as well. Absolute freak athlete. A guy who could potentially be like, I'm trying to think of like he's like the Kyle Hamilton, I guess. That he could be the Kyle Hamilton of this defense for Seattle. Mike McDonald, obviously coming from Baltimore, would love to have a Kyle Hamilton on his defense again. That feels like what that could potentially be down the road. So, like, you look at the numbers last year, 11th in points per game allowed, 11th in passing, about an average run defense. I think that gets lifted a little bit this year. And again, we're flirting with a top 10 unit in Seattle. 49ers on the other side, this is a weird team to predict. And I think it's going to take us a few weeks to kind of figure out where they truly are. But you're asking a ton of new faces and a lot of new spots to really step up and start for this team. They dealt with so many injuries last year. So thankfully, a lot of the guys that are getting opportunities now at least saw the field in some capacity, depending on where you look. But like Michael Williams is coming in from Georgia. Thankfully, he's playing opposite of Nick Bosa. I think you should feel pretty good about that. Nick Bosa is the guy that's going to get all the attention. He's going to see the double teams, and Michael Williams is definitely going to be in a spot where he finds himself in one-on-ones that should potentially be winnable for him as a first-round talent. I also think when you look at, again, Seattle's offensive line, not necessarily the best in the NFL, there's a chance that they could take advantage of that coming off the edge. So it could be an issue for Seattle. Offensively for the 49ers, Brock Purdy has a tough task. This is a strong secondary over in Seattle, and Brock Purdy has the opportunity to try and silence critics. Healthy unit. Christian McCaffrey, what's funny is I built these notes out for this game before the Christian McCaffrey news. Now dealing with an ankle, like it says healthy here. Not healthy, obviously, because a calf thing popped up. Doesn't sound like it's anything too crazy, but we've been here before with Christian McCaffrey where it was, he's going to start week 1, and then he ends up missing basically the whole season. So we'll see what happens there, but it should be, I guess, available for you this season. Maybe not this week, depending on what that calf turns into. You have a motivated Jawan Jennings who wants to get paid. No Brandon Ayuk for now. You still have George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall, obviously, that you drafted last season. He's going to have an expanded role in the offense. Brock Purdy honestly has to prove it this year. I've been very much on like a roller coaster with my belief in Brock Purdy. There was a point where I really believed in him, and then when the injuries got crazy last year, I felt like he got into spots where he was trying to play hero ball, and it was not going well. So we'll see this year where the roster sounds like it's still less than perfect, less than completely healthy where you'd want it to be at this stage going into a new season, and he's going to earn those dollars he's getting paid to him. I don't necessarily know where he ranks in the NFL at this current point amongst quarterbacks. I would assume at least top half of the league at minimum. He's definitely paid like one, but one of those guys that I'm on the fence about right now. I'm not like saying can't reach the heights that he needs to reach to be a premier quarterback in this NFL league, but yes, he's made it to a Super Bowl, but those teams early in his season were stacked, and now that he's getting paid, we watched that defense basically get picked apart by other teams that need players. So we'll see how it fares now. But this is Brock Purdy's show now, and we're going to find out week number 1 if he's able to prove it. As for who I think is going to win this game, a lot of it really just comes down to Sam Darnold, though, for me. As down as I may have just kind of sounded on Brock Purdy, I am out, like hard out on Sam Darnold. And like I said, Michael Williams getting the opportunity to play opposite of Nick Bosa, I think is a huge benefit for him. Nick Bosa, one of the best in the game coming off the edge. I could see them giving the offensive line in Seattle some fits. I could see maybe a ghost or two flying in front of Sam Darnold's face. I like the 49ers on this one here. I do think there's going to be points. I feel like these teams can put some points up against each other. I like 29-26. Like I think we could get in a little bit of a shootout, but right now, I cannot for the life of me get in on Sam Darnold. I'm sorry, Seattle. It is what it is. Next one, we go to the NFC North. Big division rival matchup between the Lions and Packers here. NFL did such a good job with week number 1 schedule this year, especially this later window. All eyes, of course, going to be on Micah Parsons. Sounds like he's going to be good to go. The back thing is definitely something to watch, but we'll see. Packers this offseason did a good job of trying to really retool their defense and put it to where it needed to be. They go out, they get a guy like a Nate Hobbs, and a lot of people it's funny because like if you're not a Packers fan, you probably don't even realize this. A lot of people point to the fact of, oh, Jair Alexander's gone. Oh, Eric Stokes is gone. Packers fans, though, I do my research, or at least I try my very best to. I'm well aware that the last couple of seasons, Jair Alexander, kind of a non-factor for this defense. Eric Stokes last season lost his starting job pretty early in the year. So yes, you can point to those losses and go, losses, but not as big of a loss as the names might sound. That being said, I think Nate Hobbs is a good addition here. Obviously, you're relying on guys like Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, and other guys to really step up and play heavy roles in the secondary, but you still have an Xavier McKinney to work with. And the Lions are stacked with playmakers, so they will have their hands full. But I do think they're in a good enough spot, especially with the addition of Micah Parsons now giving them a really good pass rush to work with. They should be okay in this first game here, depending on what the Lions offense looks like. If they come back guns blazing like last year and they don't miss Ben Johnson, we will discuss at the end of the game after that happens. As for the offense itself, I'm one of those people that feels like Jordan Love's season last year was, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for him, but I do think a piece of what last season ended up being for Jordan Love was basically just ruined by the early season injury. There's no way with how quickly he came back from his ankle injury that he was ever truly 100%. I feel like that I will die on that hill about last season for him. A healthy year with him under center. You bring in a Matthew Golden, the first round wide receiver in like 20 years for Green Bay, and a room that is filled with good wide receivers. Christian Watson, if his hamstring can just stay healthy, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. This is a good wide receiver room. You have Josh Jacobs. The offensive line is fit for the job. This should be a good season. I think we're in store for something more along the lines of like the season a couple years ago that got Jordan Love paid than what we saw from Jordan Love last season. I truly feel like the injury is what kind of rattled Jordan Love from the jump last season. And like I know that game was tough against Philly week 1 before he ultimately went down. Like it wasn't perfect by any means, but I don't think that ankle injury helped at all. I think it kind of just derailed the season as a whole. So that's kind of where I stand for them. The Lions, I really am just curious about the coordinators. Like when I look at the roster, everything that they did, this is a good unit, both offensively and defensively. Aiden Hutchinson being back will be huge for them. I like that they went out and addressed need in the secondary, getting a guy like a DJ Reed. I have basically the only thing that I'm really worried about, and this could be a problem, like a bigger problem than I'm making it out to be, is going to be the interior of that offensive line. Obviously, Frank Ragnow retired. Kevin Zeitler gone. You're replacing 2 key cogs on the interior of that offensive line, and that could be an issue. But you look at the talent, Jamison Williams is still there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is still there. You still have Jahmyr Gibbs. You still have David Montgomery. You still have Sam Laporta. And now Isaac Tesla is getting people traded away. You have all the talent on both sides of the ball. Just 2 new coordinators calling the shots on both sides of the football now. It's really going to come down to what we get from both those guys, whether it's what John Morton's doing on offense or vice versa for the defensive side. Like, that's really the only question mark I have, and it makes it hard to predict. The roster, still a playoff team. Can the coordinators match what you've been getting? Can maybe we get better defensive play from this Lions team going into the season? Like, those are the big questions here. Can the offense keep pace on what it was doing prior to the departure of Ben Johnson? Can the defense maybe get better this season? Like, we will see. But right now, playoff team still in my eyes. It's just a matter of, like, we're probably not going to see the 15-2 Lions we saw last year. We're probably going to still get double-digit wins. I could see something along the lines of a more realistic, like 10, 11, 12 wins this year. That kind of feels like there has to be some sort of regression, and that's kind of where my head is at with Detroit. For this game, this one feels like if this game was Detroit at home and Green Bay on the road, I'd probably be taking Detroit, but I feel better about Green Bay more so for home field advantage. I think we're getting points. This is one of my higher scoring games of the season. Think 31-28, something along those lines. These quarterbacks are going to take it to each other. Both sides are loaded with talent. I really like what Green Bay's brewing this season, and I have some really high hopes for them. I could be way off on that, but I have some really high hopes for them, so we'll see. But I'm going to take the Packers, 31-28, high-scoring affair. A lot of offense. Defense going to be at a premium, but I do like the Packers here. Next one we have, Texans and Rams. All eyes on this one, Texans O-line. This is like where this game starts and stops for me. What this Texans O-line looks like not only dictates this game, but the entire season for Houston. There's a lot of youth across the board this year because Tank Dell, who knows when he's coming back. You now have yourself two really young wide receivers eating up a ton of snaps for your offense. Like, yes, Nico Collins leading the way, but then you're looking at guys like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll who could be eating up a ton of time. Joe Mixon will not be available for you. And this O-line let C.J. Stroud get sacked 52 times last season. 8 games where they allowed 4+ sacks, including that 8-burger that they let up against the Jets. You have a rookie left tackle in Ariante Ursary getting going, and it sounds like it's going to be a combination of Nick Chubb, Dameon Pierce running the ball. That is where I think this starts and stops for me. The Rams' defensive front, it is good. It is young. It is exciting, led by Byron Young, Jaron Verse, and Braden Fisk. They have a stout unit of guys there that are only getting better with each passing season. I will say, secondary, not one of my favorite in the league and a little bit too old for my taste. Like Darius Williams and Akella Witherspoon, not the youngest chickens in the coop. But you still have some other young, exciting guys in that secondary to work with. A Kobe Durant, both the Camerons, rather, Curl and Kitchens. And then, of course, Quentin Lake. So, like, aside from just a little bit of age in, like, the cornerback room, this is a formidable defense. Now, Matthew Stafford's back scares me. I am, like, extremely concerned about that and what happens there. But aside from Matthew Stafford's back, the Rams' offense, absolutely loaded. Like, absolutely loaded. If the offensive line's healthy, should be a good unit. And then you look at the wide receiver room, the addition to Devontae Adams. I am huge on that addition there. Puka Nacua, in my eyes, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And the numbers per game over his career to this point prove that. I think Rams are in for quite a run this season. And if the Texans cannot stop that pass rush from getting after C.J. Stroud, it's going to be a long Sunday. I do think you could kind of say the same for the Rams O-line as well, because the Texans, they obviously boast guys like a Will Anderson Jr. and a Daniil Hunter opposite, one of if not the best pass rushing duos coming off the edge in the NFL. But I like the Rams in this one. I think they're going to give the Texans some fits. I think it's going to take a little bit for this Texans offensive line to really get itself together and gel, and it's just hard for me to buy into Houston right now because I have so much doubt within that offensive line. I need to see it first before I can believe it. And with it being also in LA, I feel better about the Rams there. So give me the Rams. I do think we see a good, like a solid scoring affair, and more of the points maybe coming from the Rams, like 28-20, something along those lines. But I need to see the offensive line of the Texans before I buy anything about Houston. Like, I like the entirety of the Houston makeup, aside from the offensive line. And I'm a big trenches guy, and if I don't feel good about the trenches, I don't feel good about that football team. And then to wrap it up, Sunday Night Football, because like I said, Monday night's game we will discuss either Sunday evening, Monday morning, whenever I get that out. We will settle on that time frame over the next couple of days here. But Sunday Night Football, to close things out, Rams versus Bills. Could not ask for a hotter start to the NFL season. I comically picked this game wrong both times last year. So I picked Buffalo to win the first game, the Ravens won, and then I picked the Ravens to win the second game, and the Bills won. So I'm trying to break that right now and hope that we don't fall to 0-3 of the last 3 games here. Buffalo, I'm curious to see if they can slow down Derrick Henry. They had Derrick Henry and Lamar, I should say, just the running game as a whole from Baltimore. The first time through, you look at the matchups, 81 yards allowed during the first game against Baltimore, so they didn't even really let a ton of things happen on the ground, but it was that second game during the playoffs, 176 yards on the ground. Baltimore just absolutely killed Buffalo, so it starts and stops there. You brought in guys like Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi to help with that exact issue, so I think good opportunity there to maybe prove yourself in week number 1 against probably the most dynamic backfield between a quarterback and running back we've ever seen, period. And then on the flip side of things, you look at Baltimore and just kind of like the offense is going to be Henry and Lamar. The question is, how long until teams just start selling out so much because of what they know they're going to get and see from Baltimore that Lamar just starts killing teams over the top with his arm. Like, he has evolved into such an unbelievable passer. And the fact that defenses have to respect not only his legs, but also Derrick Henry's as well so much is just only helping him grow each and every single. It's crazy because, like, he keeps getting better. It's absurd. And it's part of the reason why he's my favorite quarterback in the NFL right now. It's just unbelievable what he's able to do. And then the defense, like, this is a tough unit. You bring in Jair Alexander, who we kind of mentioned when we were talking Packers, hasn't been healthy the last couple of seasons. If he's healthy, could be a good addition to that secondary there. I mean, you already have some really talented guys in there, and he's just kind of adding to the riches that you have. But I really, really like and want to highlight like the guys that they drafted this past offseason. Like, you look at Malachi Starks coming in from Georgia, Mike Green from Marshall, who led the FBS in sacks. I know, coming from a smaller school, to say what you will about that, but still, it is what it is. But Malachi Starks, man, like, and it's funny because going in through the pre-draft process, I did a mock first-round draft, and I actually had Malachi Starks going to the Vikings because I feel like the Vikings and Ravens offer a similar type of, like, smash-mouth, hard-nosed style, extremely aggressive just defense that is going to kick you in the butt kind of deal. And I was like, Malachi Starks, Minnesota Vikings, it makes so much sense. Ultimately, I picked the wrong purple team. He went to Baltimore instead, and when I saw it, I was like, well, if it's not going to be Minnesota, it makes a ton of sense that it's going to be Baltimore. So unbelievable that they landed on this guy in this year's draft, but man, oh man, this is a tough one, a really, really tough one. But ultimately, Baltimore demolished Buffalo at the beginning of the season last year. It wasn't even close. And in the second time through, we look back on that Mark Andrews drop, man, and it's just like, it feels like Baltimore had Buffalo dead to rights. And if Mark Andrews catches that ball, we're having a completely different conversation potentially about how last season played out. So I'm going to take the Ravens here. I have the Ravens. I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think Buffalo prevents the blowout that they saw early in the season last year. It's going to be a much tighter game, I think, more along the lines of like what you saw from that initial or that second matchup during the playoffs. But I'm expecting points. I'm expecting both these teams to just be duking it out, and I really hope we get something along those lines. I'm thinking like 30-27. Give me the Ravens. I think the offenses will start to win out. Both defenses should be pretty good units. I'm definitely giving the edge to Baltimore, though. I just look at Baltimore right now, and this has to be their year. Just in like general speak, I'm not saying that they're winning the Super Bowl, but like this has to be their year, and you got to come out and make a statement here. So you got to come out and you got to punch the Bills right in the mouth and let everyone know you're not playing around. So I like Baltimore's chances here. Big fan of what they've built. 30-27. Give me the Ravens. But those are my predictions for week 1. Reminder again, we are going into Monday Night Football, Sunday night, or Monday morning. One of those two. Haven't decided yet, but we will have that final game. Started off the week 1-0 with a 24-20 victory with the Eagles beating the Cowboys. We're hoping for a good record this year. As always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below. Let me hear your predictions. Follow along with me as we go through the stretch of the season, picking every single game week after week after week, just for the fun of it. No betting, no spreads, no lines. We are talking football here. As always, if you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.